Whenever I release one of those videos, a thought crosses my mind that there cannot be many more little-known games left on the Amiga. And then, as I prepare the list for a video, I find that not only there still are, there's a lot. So let's check them out together then. Day of the Viper is a first-person sci-fi arcade shooter. It's not FPS as you would have imagined it to be hearing the term though. It has as much to do with Doom as Eye of the Beholder has with First Ultima. So while they're technically of the same genre, both look and play entirely different. Day of the Viper is a technological middle step between RPG dungeon crawlers like aforementioned Eye of the Beholder or Dungeon Master and real FPS games like Doom or Gloom. So it's not smooth moving or turning, but in steps and turns by 90 degrees only. That said, while slower playing, it's not boring at all. It features an auto map, various different weapons, upgrades, 33 types of enemies, and 25 levels of shooter craze. It's not just about killing baddies though, cause there's quite a few adventuring bits in the game where you have to look for specific items. Namely, and most importantly, 25 floppy disks, one on each level, containing bits of backup software for the computer that's governing the base that you're on. It went broke some time ago and requires restarting and recovering from original backup disks to function as intended. Which actually brings a tear to the eye reminiscing the times when you did keep your backups on disks, and on multiple ones at times too. Not only they were prone to damage, physical and magnetic, but were also slow and clunky. But these were the times, and to get here we had to be there, if that even makes sense. Anyway, story-wise, on a remote planet, a computer is governing the base, running its day-to-day operations and defenses. And as I mentioned before, one day it went broke, released all the robots it housed, and set them into aggressive kill-all mode. Since most humans would have tough time surviving it, Batman's on my couch as usual devouring something fatty and stinky, and you're at your computer, the next best thing was to send an android there to complete the mission. And that's what was done. And you, at your computer, are in control of said android. You have to keep him alive, arm him to the teeth as you go through the levels, collect all the floppies, get to the computer and recover the backup so that it could be fixed. Fun. And it actually is surprisingly fun. So if you never had a chance to play it, now is a good time as any to check it out. Disker is a Polish 1994 sci-fi platformer of questionable quality, and I suppose such case was not uncommon for those late Amiga games that came from the country. They were either surprisingly good, much better than they had any right to be so late in the system's life, or disappointingly bad. Usually impressive graphically, but pretty blunt in gameplay department. Sadly, Disker is one of the latter kind. The idea behind it is pretty simple. On your way to far-off planet, XOR Hox, which name I no doubt butchered, your spaceship was damaged and you had to emergency land on an unknown alien planet. And for whatever the reason, to be able to leave it and get back on your course, you have to find and collect 12 floppy disks scattered around its 3 continents. Yeah, another game about collecting disks, you heard it right. But one that's considerably less fun than the previous. Gameplay mostly consists of going through a series of flip-screen platformer screens, looking for said floppies, and avoiding and shooting various aliens. And if you for whatever the reason decide to play Disker, an advice here for you. Stick to avoiding as much as you can, as ammo is rather limited. Keep in mind, however, that any contact with an alien results in your death, so while you should save ammo when you can, don't hesitate to use your gun when your life depends on it. You have to collect dynamite sticks too and use them in appropriate places to destroy walls that block passageways. And that's pretty much it. It may sound like Disker is your average Amiga platformer, but despite looking really sleek with butter smooth, even if a bit slow animations, it's not fun. It gets old fast, and I feel only hardcore fans of platformers would ever take upon themselves to complete it. Distant Armies, a playing history of chess, is an unusual game and a true gem for fans of the classic. It's not only a chess game, it's also a history lesson and a title that will take you through more than 1000 years of chess history, introducing you to 10 completely different and yet similarly interesting and strategic variants of the game. And these are Shatranaj, Medieval Chess, Turkish Chess, Decimal Chess, Los Alamos Chess, Courier Chess, Chaturanga, Chinese Chess, Burmese Chess, and Byzantine Chess. The game starts with modern version and gradually, so to speak, goes back in time all the way to the oldest game included, Chaturanga, a variant that spawned in India over 1000 years ago. Each of the versions of the game is interesting in its own right, and if you're at the very least into chess, you should definitely check it out. If not for anything else, then to check out 6x6 or circular board versions, or even one where knight and queen are combined into a single figure. If you like the game, it's a blast. And also an encyclopedia of chess describing all variants as history and the rules in detail. So it's a true gem, even if only interesting to a very small subset of all gamers. Interphase is a really fun free-roam 3D shooter with puzzle elements, but also an incredibly stupid game. And I understand that the plot was supposed to be cyberpunk/Blade Runner-ish, futuristic computerized dystopian hacker story blah blah blah, but it's overthought to the point of being ridiculous, dumb and tiring. In short, in the future there are so-called dream tracks that store memories, fantasies, dreams and experiences of people, and they're accessible by others for means of entertainment. So obviously only the exciting and interesting ones are saved. But as with most evolved societies, those in power start to slip in subliminal messages into this, encouraging people to buy certain products or even have certain political views. Such a powerful tool of control and propaganda has not been seen before, especially that the dream tracks are really addictive and everyone's on them, or using them to be precise. So, naturally, you being the warrior for good and freedom that you are, decide to do something about it, and destroy one especially dangerous of those tracks. You ask your girlfriend to go and get it, and in the same time you jump into Cyberworld to crack the CPU running it to destroy it and help the girl in track's recovery. Like I said, stupid. But, and it's really the most important thing about it, story is irrelevant here cause gameplay is where it's at. And it is. I mean fun. It's fun. It's really good what I'm trying to say here. So you fly this, I think, ship within the three-dimensional representation of the system housing the CPU that controls the complex your girlfriend went into to get the track. And you have to defeat the overwhelming program defenses and help her in getting to where she needs to. So you'll be opening doors and passages for her, turning off camera software so that she would get inside virtually unnoticed and unharmed, and assisting her in any way you can while trying to stay alive. First level is a breeze, but from second onward the puzzles and requests from her are more and more demanding, and by extension of that the game becomes more challenging but also more fun. As I stated initially, Interphase is stupid, but it's also gloriously enjoyable if you give it time to familiarize yourself with how it works and what it's all about. And I'm sure that it will no doubt become one of your favorite hidden gem games of yours soon enough. The Humans is fantastic. No, really, I'm not just saying that, it's a brilliant little, smartly crafted, put together game. It looks and sounds great too, so it's a package unlike many, that for a reason unknown to myself was never as popular as it could have, nay, should have been. Especially that conceptually it's not unlike incredibly popular Lemmings that came out just a little earlier and was also a puzzler with levels based on platforms at most times. But I suppose it's the difficulty level that's the culprit here. Cause while most Lemmings levels had to be completed fast using obviously available skills, Humans is slower, more methodical and strategic puzzler, even if also limited by its timer. In theory, in Humans your goal is to help a group of Neanderthals to discover tools, will, fire and any other technologies that would help them to develop in who we are now. In theory. In practice, all you have to do in each stage is to get your group of few humans to the exit. It will obviously require avoiding death and learning how to use various tools and prehistoric inventions, but they will be introduced gradually level by level so that not to overwhelm you. That said, when taught about something from that level onward, you will be expected not only to remember said things' obvious uses, but also think creatively where else they could be applied even if it's not been clearly shown to you. So Humans is definitely a thinking man's game. While you can control only one human at the time, you can switch between them, assigning them various different tasks, and you will have to do that all the time, because completing most levels will require teamwork. It's a novel, and while difficult, also incredibly rewarding formula, because in the end it's incredibly gratifying to eventually complete one of those more demanding stages, figuring out how to do it after countless prior failures. While Humans may not be the best puzzle platformer or platform puzzler on the Amiga, it's easily one of the best, and a game that deserves more recognition than it ever received. Fightin Spirit is a versus fighting game unlike any other on the Amiga. It tells a story of 10 hardcore brawlers and fighters competing in a hand-to-hand combat tournament to win a chance of becoming gang members of a crime family ruling the city, directly under a brutal wing of a crime overlord himself. And before we get any further, I would like to take a closer look at the presentation of the game. Not only it's stellar, colorful and rich in detail, but also rather smooth and very similar to certain style of games you've seen before, namely SNK fighters. And since Amiga's ports of Mortal Kombat games were technically excellent, but the devs of Street Fighter titles dropped the ball on most of their ports, non-digitized, well-playing and great-looking cartoon-like fighters were a wanted product on the Amiga. Fightin Spirit fits the bill perfectly. It emulates gameplay mechanics of the best titles found in the arcades superbly, using Amiga's hardware capabilities, both graphic and sound alike, to their fullest, and in the process serving incredible experience and hella fun game, that in 1996 sadly came too too little too late, long after Commodore was gone and Amiga users were either mostly gone too, or in the process of moving to other newer systems like PlayStation or PC. All fighters obviously have their own unique techniques, moves and special attacks, some can even transform into other creatures, and the game supports 2-button controls. Which for console players may seem like a moot point and something not worth mentioning whatsoever, but for the last few remaining Amiga users at the time it was a godsend, as they were long tired of 99.9% of games using single-button controls. And it also meant that we could minimize joystick gymnastics quite a bit and didn't have to memorize complicated 17 joystick moves long combinations to issue simple special attacks. If you like good fighters, there's just a few that can compare to Fightin Spirit on the Amiga. Klax is an action puzzler with very simple mechanics that's surprisingly addictive. It's also a port from the arcades and it's conceptually a mix between Tetris and Columns. The gameboard is divided into top and bottom. Top is composed of 5 lanes that the colorful blocks fall from continuously, bottom houses the paddle that you control directly and 5 storage areas for blocks. The idea here is simple, all you have to do is arrange blocks in such a way that they would form rows, columns and diagonals of at least 3 of the same color. When they do, they are removed from the screen, freeing more space in the storage area. Oh, it's worth pointing out that the diagonals reward the most points. What you can also, if you manage to, that is, create combos, meaning rows, columns and slash or diagonals all at once. Klax consists of 99 more and more demanding levels, increasing gradually in block dropping speed and number of colors. Many levels have no requirements, but as you progress they will start appearing for some stages, like having to make certain number of columns or rows, or getting a set number of points, or even surviving a set number of blocks. It may not seem like much when spoken about, but when you're actually playing Klax and everything seems to be happening fast all at once, that you can barely contain all the chaos, having to fulfill even a simple task is a lot. Thankfully you can store up to 5 blocks on your paddle before needing to drop them somewhere, so especially in those latter, more difficult stages, it will become crucial to plan ahead and strategize when and where to drop each of them. So, as you see, technically speaking Klax is simple and it takes but a second to figure out how to play it. But mastering the game is an entirely different thing, and only most agile and sharp minds will be able to go through the entire game with ease. In 1996, Amiga along with Commodore were officially long gone. Most owners moved to other systems, and the dwindling Amiga gamer population was on the verge of disappearing entirely. It was also a year in which I finally gave up on my beloved system and moved to PC. At the time I did not think much of it, other than having access to much better and more impressive graphically games. Today I feel I should have kept my Amiga as the time went by and missed it more and more. Obviously I can do both today, emulate any Amiga game I'd like, or even fire up my real A500 and play games natively. Though I gotta be honest here, I have no screen I could connect it to, so... Anyway, in 1996 there weren't many of us left, so releasing games on Amiga was a questionable choice by any of the devs that spent months if not years working on their game. One of them, however, decided to drop their latest game, a versus/tournament fighter, Capital Punishment. A word of warning here, my words are going to be a bit polarizing, as unlike most gaming mags of the time, I am not a huge fan of it. Quite the opposite in fact. So, you may and most likely do feel different about it. Capital Punishment is an abomination of a child spawned by ungodly love between Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat. At least that's what it feels that the devs aimed for. The graphics are drawn and not digitized, and yet it's overly brutal with bucketfuls of blood and gruesome finishes galore. And to give justice where it's due, the presentation in terms of both graphics and sound design is short of magnificent. It looks incredible, there are some neat visual effects in some of the stages, and sounds are crisp and chunky as you would have expected them in the best in the genre. But, and from my point of view it's probably the biggest issue with Capital Punishment, it tried to be both of these aforementioned games in the same time, without realizing that despite representing the same genre, they are fundamentally different. So it tried to be all, and ended up being a master of none. Don't get me wrong though, I don't hate or consider it one of the worst fighters on the Amiga, not the case at all here. I just think that other than the presentation, it's unspectacular. There are some nice and interesting ideas all throughout, but it feels like the devs tie them all together by thin, imaginary, invisible strings and not a coherent design direction, resulting in a game that works, but that's as much as I can say about it, as I don't find it very fun at all. All that said, at the very least, if for nothing else, it's worth checking out to see all the brutal finishers. Prospector in the Mazes of XOR is a follow-up to Aerial XOR and an Amiga-exclusive boulder dash-like action puzzler. It contains 15 levels found in the original and additional 15 new ones for a total of 30 madness-filled stages. If that wasn't enough and for whatever the reason after completing the game you'd crave more, there's a built-in level editor. Though completing your own creations does not sound like fun. So either find someone to make them for you or download them off the internet. I'm sure they can be found somewhere in the depths of Aminet or the likes. Still, the main objective of each stage is to guide two characters through it collecting blue balloons. These two have to work together as a team, and yeah, I know what I just said, and despite that it's still a single player game. So that they would help each other crossing locked off areas or navigating various dangers and obstacles. There's quite a few puzzles to complete and some of the stages may have just one correct way of beating them. So while you may fail a couple of times here and there, figuring out how to complete a particularly difficult stage can feel really rewarding. It doesn't change the fact though that Prospectors' levels are pretty uneven and some may be considerably more demanding than others, and not necessarily in an increasing order of stages as you go through the game. Graphics and sounds are a-okay for a puzzler, even if unspectacular by Amiga standard, and overall Prospector in the Mazes of XOR feels like a genuinely fun and addictive game, even if a bit more on the demanding side. Brat is like Lemmings, but not really and not at all. But it also is, just a little. I know, now you have no idea what it's all about, but I'll do my best to explain. Which is not saying a lot as my mental capabilities are at best limited. I'm not Man-Bat after all. I'll give it a go anyway. So, it's an arcade puzzler in isometric top-down view in which you have to help the titular Brat to the end of each stage. Very similar to what you do in Lemmings, just in different perspective, and he's all on his own rather than in a pack of panicking and blindly walking forward creatures. Come to think of it, he does walk blindly without any care in the world straight to his death if you're not there to stop him. So he's as stupid as a lemming is? While our Brat walks like a silly potato that he is, you can actually direct him by dropping arrows on his way, and when he gets to one he immediately changes direction to the one indicated on it. There are also items Brat can pick up by walking over them, and they can be any manner of odd things like a milk bottle that will restart the level from the point you die at and not from the beginning, a dynamite stick that you can tell Brat to use to destroy rock boulders, or even a stop sign that pauses his movement until you tell him to keep going again. There's few more, but you get the gist, I hope. The screen scrolls on its own, so same as with Lemmings, while you have few seconds of a headroom viewing the stage before Brat gets through it, you often gotta act fast and place all the direction arrows and items correctly. It can become hectic at times, especially that there's also environmental dangers everywhere, so expect to replay some levels more than once. Brat is composed out of 12 levels, each consisting of 3 stages, so it's not a small game and will take a while to complete given its challenge level. Is it as good as Lemmings? It's not, to be honest, but it's not far off, so if you enjoy those demanding action puzzlers, it's definitely one to track down and play. So, what do you think about today's set of obscure games? Any you knew of? Maybe particular one surprised you? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below. If you didn't, well then there's thumbs down there too. But I suppose you wouldn't have persevered up to this point if you really didn't. Around 60% of you are not subscribed, and there's currently no way of knowing if YouTube will decide to recommend you the next episode or not, other than subscribing and hitting that bell, that is. And when you hit that bell, whenever the new video is out, YouTube will actually send you a small and friendly notification about it, so you wouldn't miss it. If you'd like to support the channel, Patreon and YouTube memberships are a great way of doing so. They will help me release better content, and also they get first dibs on all new videos before they're publicly accessible on YouTube. If you can't or don't want to do that though, likes and subscribes are great too. I would like to take a moment here and thank all the YouTube creators from whose videos short bits were taken to serve as a background to my commentary. They're amazing and stars among the retro community. You will find names of their channels at the top of the screen when their footage is running, and also in the video description below. For me though, this is all, so have a good one and I'll see you next time. Peace.